decided to join us today for one of our tech talks. Now, for context, we are an academy led by technology, grounded in social justice, and our Tech Talk series features scientists, engineers, educators, entrepreneurs who are learning and growing the ways that we interact with technology in today's society. I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Jeff Stibel, who is live from California. We're giving nothing but sun and sand for today's vibes. Jeff Stibel is a brain scientist turned entrepreneur, and I'm so excited for you to hear about the work that he's done to really bring science and some of our greatest technological ideas into the mainstream. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and good to see everyone.
Amazing. So I didn't want to go too long on the introduction because, I could have gone to Google and gone wild because I want to hear you introduce yourself in your own words. And I think our audience would benefit from that. So the floor is yours.
Sure, I'm happy to do it. I don't think you'll get much. The long and short of it is I'm a pretty lucky kid. It's that simple. I was I was a below average student for quite a long time. Luckily got into college, and when I got there, I found almost everything interesting. And the more I studied, the more I learned, the more I enjoyed it. And from there, I just allowed my passions to take me on their own course. And that's allowed me to navigate from academics to science to writing books and writing for the USA Today, as well as what I think most people know about me, which is starting and running a number of companies, as well as a venture firm with my dear friends who recently passed, Kobe Bryant.
So we call that a light flex. When I'm like, introduce yourself, you're like, I'm not going to say much, but then you're like, I wrote a book and I opened a venture capital firm with the late Kobe Bryant. So I know that when you were a child and you were looking at the world and looking at the way that you wanted to fit in, your goals probably weren't that specific. Our goals as children very rarely are. So when you were growing up, what did you want to be? What was your I want to be this when I grow up, fill in the blank?
Uh, if I'm being candid and honest, I didn't know how to fill in that blank, and I probably didn't even care. It's interesting as I look now at life through the lens of my two young kids. They're both in high school. Dennett's 14 and Lincoln is 16. I see a lot of me in them. They're in the process of exploring, thinking through, and our jobs are to try to make sure that they don't do anything that closes off opportunity, because the reality is whatever you think you want to do is probably not what you're going to actually do. And you don't want to be so hell-bent on being an entrepreneur or a doctor or an educator or a scientist, to the exclusion of all the other great things in the world, because you just don't know them when you're a kid. I certainly didn't. I wish I had that perspective. I didn't. I just didn't care. But eventually I did, and I realized how big a world it was, and how much of an impact you could have if you followed your passions.
Wow, I think that's really powerful because there's so many people who feel, especially in today's age of social media, if you don't, if you're not, if you aren't a viral sensation by like age 12, right? Like you're doing things wrong. And there's so many more people who come into their passions later in life and are able to create really fulfilling careers. But yours actually started as a scientist. So can you talk a little bit about how you went from I'm not really sure what I want to do to brain science?
Sure. I mean, it was a pretty natural transition because when I got to college, I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have enough experience or understanding of what the different fields even were. So I just started taking a handful of courses in psychology and philosophy and in other sciences in the humanities. And the central theme for me was that everything you do has something to do with the brain and with your brain, because without it, you wouldn't get very far. And the more I learned, the more I realized there was nothing particularly mysterious about the brain. There was nothing even interesting or unusual. It was an organ, sitting inside a big chalice, your skull. But that ordinary organ did some pretty remarkable things, and it allowed us to communicate, to make decisions, to store information, to calculate things. So for me, I decided not that I wanted to study the brain, but that if I wanted to do anything in life, I need to have a good understanding of the brain. So I started taking more and more courses in cognitive science and brain science, and eventually fell in love with the field in general, and ended up going from undergraduate to graduate school. And even to this day, I still take courses. I take a seminar at UCLA that meets on Mondays, right? Right now, because they'll have the old guy, and they just don't know any better. This is great. Sure, come on in. It's wonderful because as inapplicable it is to my day job, in practice, in theory, everything I learn about the brain can be applied to almost everything that I do.
And I would take that further and say that science can be applied to a lot of facets of our everyday life, whether it's the scientific process or just science literacy. And I think we've seen a lot of that recently, the need to understand how science works and how knowledge works. So,
And by the way, I think that's so true, but I'll even take that even more further and abstract it. Learning, put aside science. If you like baseball cards or dolls or underwater basket weaving, just the ability to learn and learn how to learn new things and how to apply them is so powerful. It doesn't. I know this is a STEAM academy, but it doesn't actually have to be STEAM. If you learn how to learn, that is a skill set that you can take with you anywhere, and you will be able to apply it whether it's in science, whether it's in business, or anywhere else. The beauty and power of science is you learn about the scientific method, which is a way to learn. And it's been something that's been studied and proven over the last 5,000 plus years, and it's incredibly powerful to learn how to do hypothesis testing, and really only science teaches you that.
wow. Yeah, that's actually super true. So, with that in mind, I think especially now with this push to get more people into science, especially to get more women and more people of color, into science, sometimes we don't think that because we've been invested in all along the way that we can just leave and do something else, right? But there are so
Mm.
many people who want to. And so somebody like yourself makes the decision to study science, but feels their passions pulling them somewhere else. What was the impetus or the trigger that needed to be pulled for you to go, I don't want to be an academic scientist. I want to be an entrepreneur and to make that decision to transition?
Yeah, and a lot of things built into that question, and a lot to unpack. I think the most important thing that you said is for anyone, whether it's a minority status issue, you don't think you have the background, you don't think you have the experience. The more people tell you you can't do it, that should be your rally call to do it. Don't listen to anyone. I was a proverbial dumbass when I got to college, and I genuinely mean that. I should not have gone to college, and I had a bunch of professors telling me that I shouldn't go to college. True story. I didn't know the difference between psychology and philosophy, and that's how I took my first philosophy class, because I thought that meant studying the brain, and I learned no, I was a dumbass. But that's okay. Dumbasses can learn too. So It's not that you shouldn't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Let them tell you, but don't listen to them and take that as gospel. Listen to them and say, now I have something to prove. I'm going to prove them wrong. This stuff isn't that hard. Take it from someone who isn't that good at what he does, who isn't that smart. If you work hard enough and you're persistent, you can do anything in this world. And that is perhaps the most important lesson. And the beauty is, despite the fact that there are plenty of jerks in this world, there are far more people who are themselves passionate. And if you reach out to them, they will help you. And I'm talking about very well known, very well established people. They love the fact that you're the underdog, but you're still willing to take the initiative. And it brings tears to their eyes, and they want to help you. And because of that, you can leverage that underdog status to do all kinds of things. And in my case, back to the question, to pivot over and over and over again. Because a scientist going into business, oh, you can't do that. Yes, I can, and I'm going to. All right, well, if you're going to, then I better help you, because you're gonna fail miserably. I'm like, great, I love failing miserably, because the truth is, when I succeed, the only thing I get from it is, I guess I was pretty lucky, because I don't usually know why I succeed. But when I fail, I always know why I failed. I always kick myself. I learn a little bit, and then the next time I fail a little bit less. And that's the trick in life. Fail less. As you continue going on in life with that perspective, you fail less and less and less and less. And then other people go, what you call failure is actually success. Oh, I guess it is. That's kind of cool. And that mindset, that attitude, will not just propel you, but it will propel the other naysayers who are in your face as obstacles, to either clear away and go, you know what, just not worth saying it. This person won't listen when I'm trying to be negative, or convert them, which is even better. You're a jerk. You're mean. You're whatever you are to me. I'm gonna prove you wrong, and I'm gonna demonstrate to you that I will figure this out, and eventually you win those people over. And that's kind of the mindset that you need to have well before you even figure out what you're doing.
Wow, I think that's really powerful. Just using the no's as fuels for your yes. Just, I hear
Yes,
you, but no. And we're just going to keep saying no back and forth until the stronger mind wins.
exactly.
So you started your first company, and that led to a long string of companies that you started and led and sold. And so I'm curious, along the way, is there any advice that you wish you could, beam in and tell your younger self?
There, there is the biggest one. Unfortunately, was already stolen. Just do it, right? The old Nike slogan. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you always hear that it's these young kids who are always succeeding. And back when I was a kid, I sat there going, oh, that's because you have youth. You're not, you have fresh perspective. You understand the world better. You have different mentality. None of that's actually really true. The truth is, us old people, we have responsibilities and obligations, and that leads to hesitation and fear. We've got mortgages to pay, kids to put through school. When you're young, you have none of that. So there's nothing standing in your way. So it wasn't my brilliance when I was young, or my ability to see things differently than all those people who I thought were really old, and now I'm that age, and I'm trying to pretend I'm not. It was the fact that when I started my first company, we rented office space and bought a bunch of sleeping bags. I said, great. I don't need an apartment anymore. I can just sleep in the office and work in the office, and eat ramen noodles, and and sort of live off of nothing, which I can't do right now. And that edge meant that, as bad as I was, despite not realizing that, compared to some of these people with much more experience and much more knowledge, um, I was able to do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, versus other people who had to go home to their kids, or had to run to the bank. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't need to do that. And that was a real advantage. And for me in my 20s, I had that. And that's why for entrepreneurs, fortune doesn't really favor the bold; it favors the young. So if this is something you really want to do, just jump in and do it. And you'll figure out all the other stuff. Put aside your fear, your trepidation, your lack of knowledge. Surround yourself with those other people who will leave at 5. But between 9 and 5, you'll get a lot from them. And then learn and grow, and don't be so outcome driven is probably the other thing that I would say to my younger self. The process is the outcome, because you learn so much. And if you fail, even a hard failure, and you go out of business, you can always start another one. You'll learn, you'll grow, you'll do it again. Maybe it'll fail again. Then you can start another one. And eventually, when you can't start another one, someone will hire you because you've got all that experience failing, and you'll help teach them how not to do that. And other people will learn from your mistakes. So that would probably be the set of advice that I would give.
Wow. I think that's all really, really powerful. Now, I have to ask about your pursuit with the late, great Kobe Bryant. So please tell me about the genesis of Bryant Stibel. And for those of us who have either decided on a life in science or are way before deciding what their life might center, please break down what venture capital is.
so if you know what entrepreneurship is, which is basically starting a company, starting a company requires two things at the highest level. It requires people willing to do the work, and people willing to fund those people to do the work. The people doing the work are the entrepreneurs. The people funding the work being done are the venture capitalists. So you raise venture capital to build your company, and that's in essence what venture capital is. A lot of venture capital comes from former entrepreneurs, because you eventually get to a certain age, and once you're at that age, you can't start another company. So you say, you know what, I'm going to help that next generation. It's a good way to pay it forward, and that's largely what we did at Bryant Stibel. And the genesis of that was a pivot. Both Kobe and I were doing something different. I was running a very large organization called Dun & Bradstreet Credibility, and Kobe, as we all know, was playing very successfully for the Lakers, and both he and I knew at some point that path was going to come to an end, but we didn't want to stop doing what we loved, and wanted to help others succeed. And we basically came together and said, you know what, through venture capital and through Bryant Stibel, we can help that next generation of leaders in business. And that was the genesis of how we started Bryant Stibel. It evolved into something, I think, much bigger than that. But in the beginning, it was just another simple pivot, where we both said, okay, where can we add value next?
Wow. Okay. And I appreciate the very simple explanation of entrepreneurship and venture capital. I wish more people broke it down that way. So, what was or what is, I should say, because maybe it's still in process, what is your proudest moment as an entrepreneur? And I'm going to ask that question a second time. What is your proudest moment as a venture capitalist? So, two standout moments in these different phases, if you will.
Sure, and I'm only going to give you one answer because it's the same across both. Look, I believe in people. I study the brain. So my proudest moments are when we're empowering people to succeed and to enable them to achieve their version of success. And when I was running companies as an entrepreneur and as a CEO, that was my goal and objective. Figure out what made the company successful, and by proxy made the people inside the company successful. As a venture capitalist and in private equity, we do the exact same thing, just not from the leadership standpoint as CEO, but either from the board or other roles where we can help the team feel empowered to succeed and to help others succeed.
Okay, amazing. So I have one final question, and
Great.
then you will then we will let you get back to your busy life as a California-based venture capitalist.
Now,
Um,
this stuff, by the way, is far more important. You heard what my proudest moments are. For me, doing something like this is helping that next generation, because I want to see these first star students do something remarkable and do something that they're proud of.
Amazing, amazing. There is so much conversation about technology right now. We are having conversations about, some people are talking about Web 3.0, which I heard in like a coffee conversation,
Mhm.
could not break down to you. People are talking about NFTs. People are talking about, harnessing the power of being able to trade your own stocks, and understand markets. And so, for somebody who is just looking to get their feet wet, if you will, in the tech world, in the entrepreneurship world, which often shares some sides, what would be your advice to that person or that student who's just looking for a little background knowledge?
Just start reaching out to people. People who you think are unattainable. Give them your background. Give them your story. Show them that you're humble. You're willing to learn, and do a lot of that. For every 100 people that you're reaching out to, maybe one of them will get back to you, and that's okay. It's not that others are being mean. It's that for every 100 people you reach out to, each one of them probably has 100 people reaching out to them. So it's not always possible for them to get back to you. But if you reach out to enough of them, they'll get back to you. And then just quietly soak it in, learn. And if you see something, if you find an angle, if you find an area of opportunity, lean into it. Why not? What do you have to lose? The worst that could happen is you look like an idiot or you fail. But as I think I've said repeatedly on this show, um, that's part of learning. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And technology moves very, very quickly, and it is moving at a quicker pace as time goes on. So the other thing that you need to do is take a deep breath, step back, and ask yourself why. There's a good argument to be made that part of the problem that we have right now is that we're over leveraging technology. So as someone in the digital age, growing up, in that age, it might also be wise to ask yourself if you should be contrarian. Should I be turning off some of this technology? Is it all good for me? So not just how can I leverage and use it, but where is that technology negative? Where is it infringing my relationships with friends, with colleagues, with others? Where is it getting away in the way of things that I can do? And when you understand that dynamic, you can differentiate between how technology can be used for good and how technology can be used for bad in your own life. And then if you go towards a career in science or in entrepreneurship, you can also then figure that out for other people in their lives.
Wow, those are really powerful closing words, unless you have any other gems that you'd like to share.
Unfortunately, no. I'm out. I'm out.
I think that you've done a great job, and that many people will have already found something that they resonate with. So that is
Thank you.
totally
Too kind.
fine.
Too kind.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Please join me in thanking Jeff Stibel for giving of his time and his talent, clearly his talent for public speaking. I know I'm not the only one. If you're interested in more STEAM Academy updates, please sign up to receive those updates at firststar.org/STEAM. And please connect with us on social media. We are First Star STEAM on Instagram or First Star Academies if you're interested in our general programming. As I said again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.